Imagine a wild, untamed world where the winds roamed freely through dense, endless forests and rivers flowed like pulsating veins of life. This was the scene of 17th century North America, a vast land full of contrasts where ancient cultures struggled to survive while encountering new beliefs and customs. Among the frozen valleys of New France lived a strong and proud people, the Mohawks, one of the indigenous nations that formed the powerful Iroquois Confederacy. It is within this setting that the story of Catherine Tekakwitha begins. And believe me, this is no ordinary tale. It's one of those stories that makes you stop and reflect on what truly matters in life. But before we delve into her journey, let's step back in time to understand what was happening in this part of the world. In the 17th century, North America was a land of extremes. Indigenous villages faced constant threats from epidemics, while Europeans arrived with their missions and their desire to civilize the new world. Don't think it was a peaceful encounter. It was a clash of cultures, ideas, and often weapons. Yet amidst all this, there was room for stories of faith and transformation, like Kateri's. She was born in 1656 in a village near what we now know as Port Orange in Canada. It was a complicated time. The Mohawks were warriors, but they were also farmers, fishers, and deeply connected to nature. To them, every tree, every river, every animal had a spirit. The Jesuits, who had begun to arrive in the region, brought an entirely different perspective, speaking of one God and salvation through Jesus Christ. Now imagine this. In the middle of this whirlwind of beliefs, Kateri came into the world as a symbol of two seemingly irreconcilable worlds. Her father was the village chief, a man who followed the traditions of his ancestors. Her mother, on the other hand, was a Christian who had been captured from another tribe. You can imagine the conflict, right? Yet despite everything, Kateri's parents managed to live in harmony, and it was her mother who planted the first seed of Christian faith in the young girl's heart. However, fate was not kind to her. When Kateri was just 4 years old, a smallpox epidemic swept through the village like a storm. It was a tragedy that spared no one. Scarred faces, burning fevers, and in the end, silence. Her parents and brother didn't survive. Only Kateri remained, but at a high cost. Her face was left marked by scars, and her eyesight weakened, as if the disease had stolen not only her family, but also a part of her identity. Orphaned, she was taken in by her uncle, who became the new village chief. He wasn't exactly a loving caretaker. Kateri grew up in a harsh environment where her faith, passed down from her mother, was viewed with suspicion. The entire village seemed intent on shaping her to follow the expected path: marriage, starting a family, and continuing their traditions. But she had other plans, even if she didn't fully understand them yet. Can you imagine the loneliness of this girl? A child who, while everyone around her was busy trying to survive, felt a different kind of calling deep in her heart. She prayed silently in secret, and her faith was like a small flame that refused to be extinguished, no matter how strong the winds blew against it. The years passed, and Kateri grew into a quiet young woman, always helping her aunt with household chores and weaving skillfully, despite her poor eyesight. But inside, she carried a strength no one could have imagined. When Jesuit missionaries arrived in the region, Kateri saw in them an opportunity to change her life. Now hold on tight, because the story is about to get even more captivating. Kateri decided to seek out the missionaries. It was dangerous, of course. They were seen as intruders, and many indigenous people believed their arrival brought bad luck. But Kateri wasn't one to be intimidated. With her heart racing and a determination only someone with such a strong calling could possess, she approached the mission. This was the moment when everything began to change. In 1676, at the age of 20, Kateri was baptized and given the name Catherine in honor of Saint Catherine of Siena. For her, baptism was like finding a new family, a new identity, but for her village, it was a scandal. People started whispering, casting disapproving glances her way. And it didn't stop there. Her refusal to marry, something expected of every young woman, only fueled the hostilities. Her uncle, who was far from affectionate to begin with, increased the pressure. He wanted her to abandon what he saw as stubbornness and follow tradition. But Kateri was made of sterner stuff. She didn't give in. And when she realized that staying in the village could put her life at risk, she made the hardest decision of her life: to flee. Now you might be wondering, how could someone so young and seemingly fragile cross miles of hostile territory full of dangers to find safety? That's exactly what she did. Kateri embarked on a journey that seemed impossible, braving the cold, hunger, and the constant fear of being captured. Every step was an act of faith. She knew she wasn't alone. She believed God was guiding her. When she finally arrived at the St. Francis Xavier mission near Montreal, it was like finding an oasis in the desert. There, Kateri discovered not only refuge, but also the chance to live her faith fully. At the mission, she received her first communion and began building a life devoted to prayer and service. She cared for the sick, helped the elderly, and spent long hours in prayer, often retreating to the forest to find silence with God. Even in this sanctuary, her health remained fragile. Each day felt like a battle, but Kateri never complained. She believed her suffering was a way to grow closer to Jesus. Her unwavering faith led her to take a perpetual vow of chastity, dedicating her life entirely to God. In 1680, at the age of 24, Kateri passed away. But her death was not the end. Moments before she died, the scars that had marked her face throughout her life vanished, revealing a beauty that seemed otherworldly. It was a miracle that deeply moved everyone present. From that moment on, her story began to spread. She was called the Lily of the Mohawks, a pure flower that had bloomed despite adversity. Over time, her reputation for holiness grew, inspiring many to learn about her life and her unwavering faith. Today, Saint Catherine Tekakwitha is remembered as a symbol of courage, purity, and love for creation. Her canonization in 2012 was a recognition that even in the most challenging circumstances, it's possible to live a life full of grace. There are several fascinating and inspiring details about Saint Catherine Tekakwitha's life. She is known as the Lily of the Mohawks because of her purity and devotion. This flower symbolizes delicacy and beauty, reflecting Kateri's life, which blossomed despite the hardships she endured. In the eyes of her tribe, Kateri's decision not to marry was an act of extraordinary courage. Marriage was considered a cultural obligation, especially for women. Her choice to live as a consecrated virgin was revolutionary for her time and context. Although her face had been scarred by smallpox, which disfigured her as a child, witnesses reported that after her death, her scars miraculously disappeared, revealing an angelic beauty. This was seen as a sign of her sanctity. She often took long walks into the forest to pray, using nature as a place to connect with God. This, combined with her care and respect for creation, led the Church to recognize her as the patroness of ecology and the environment. Even though she lived only 24 years, her short life had such a profound impact that her reputation for holiness quickly spread among indigenous tribes and missionaries. Saint Catherine Tekakwitha was the first Native American woman to be canonized. This milestone was not only spiritual, but also cultural, highlighting the importance of faith within the context of indigenous traditions. Her contemporaries frequently describe Kateri as someone with an almost supernatural serenity, even amid persecution and physical suffering. This tranquility and joy were seen as the fruit of her deep intimacy with God. To this day, thousands of pilgrims visit the National Shrine of Saint Catherine Tekakwitha in Fonda, New York, and the Shrine of St. Francis Xavier Mission in Canada, sites associated with her life and spirituality. Her canonization in 2012 by Pope Benedict XVI was a significant event for indigenous communities across North America, who see in Kateri a symbol of hope and faith. These details illustrate how extraordinary Kateri's life was and how her holiness touched the lives of many, both in her time and today. The story of Saint Catherine Tekakwitha is a powerful invitation to reflect on courage, faith, and surrender. When I think about her life, I am deeply moved by her ability to maintain the purity of her faith amid challenges that most of us can hardly imagine. She lived in a time and place where life was harsh, yet she found the strength to follow a path that defied the expectations of her culture, her family, and even her physical frailty. Kateri teaches us that true strength is not found in physical power or dominance, but in the ability to stand firm in what we believe, even when it means facing rejection, humiliation, and persecution. How often in our lives are we called to make difficult choices, but out of fear or complacency, we shy away from what truly matters? Kateri shows us that it's worth risking everything for a greater purpose. Something that deeply moves me is the way Kateri found strength in God to face loneliness. I can only imagine how difficult it must have been for a young woman, orphaned and physically scarred by illness, to endure the rejection of her own community. Yet, she didn't close herself off in bitterness or resentment. On the contrary, she turned her pain into a bridge to something greater. It makes me wonder, how often do we let our wounds define us, instead of using them as opportunities to grow closer to God and her love for nature? That touches me profoundly. Kateri saw creation as a reflection of God's presence, and her life was marked by a special connection to the natural world. In times like ours, when we often treat the environment carelessly, she reminds us of the importance of caring for creation as part of our faith. Every tree, every river, every animal is a testament to God's beauty, and Kateri recognized this with a clarity that we so often overlook. The miracle of her scars disappearing at the moment of her death also makes me reflect. It's as if God wanted to show us that true beauty isn't measured by outward marks, but by the purity and surrender of our hearts. Kateri, who lived much of her life with a disfigured face, became a symbol that holiness transcends appearances. What a powerful message for a world that values aesthetics so much and essence so little. Finally, Kateri Tekakwitha leaves us a legacy of humility and perseverance. She didn't accomplish grand feats by worldly standards, but she was faithful in small things, and that's what made her a saint. Her story inspires me to strive to be better, not through grand gestures or promises, but with a heart that loves God and serves others, even in the simplest actions of daily life. Kateri's life reminds us that holiness is within reach. It doesn't matter who we are, where we come from, or what scars, physical or emotional, we carry. What matters is our willingness to give everything to God and let Him transform us. And that, my friend, is a lesson for all of us. Prayer to Saint Catherine Tekakwitha. Saint Catherine Tekakwitha, Lily of the Mohawks, example of purity and faith, we turn to you with humility and trust. You who courageously faced pain, rejection, and hardship, teach us to persevere in God's path, even when the challenges seem insurmountable. Help us to see, as you did, the beauty of God in creation, to care for the environment, and to cherish nature as a divine work. May we also find strength in the simplicity of silence and prayer to overcome our daily struggles. Intercede for us, dear Saint, so that we may have pure hearts, humble spirits, and unwavering faith. Grant us the courage to live as witnesses of Christ's love, even in the face of the world's pressures and difficulties. Saint Catherine Tekakwitha, pray for us, for indigenous peoples, and for all who seek comfort and hope. May your example of holiness inspire us to be better and to love God above all things. Amen. The story of Saint Catherine Tekakwitha is a powerful reminder that, even in the most difficult circumstances, it's possible to live with courage, purity, and faith. Her journey inspires us to seek God in every detail of life, to care for His creation, and to keep our hearts steadfast, even when facing rejection and challenges. Catherine, the lily of the Mohawks, teaches us that holiness is within everyone's reach if we surrender our lives into God's hands. If you've been touched by this story, subscribe to Journey of the Saints, Sacred Stories, share this video with your loved ones, and leave a like to help us continue spreading stories of faith and inspiration. Now, we'd love to hear from you. What lesson from Saint Catherine Tekakwitha's life touched your heart the most? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your reflection. And before you go, don't miss the chance to watch one of the videos recommended above, chosen especially for you. It's sure to enrich your journey of faith. See you next time.